That is
Right.
fine now?
Now it's perfect.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the nice introduction, Inga, and thank you for the really nice talk, Timo. So today I'll be talking a little bit about how my experience of making applications and also how what I learned from applications made by my friends and colleagues all around the world. So briefly, a little bit about myself. I have jumped quite a bit in my scientific journey. I did my undergrad and master's in applied agriculture in India, pretty much farming, growing plants for food. Then I did my PhD in developmental endocrinology in the US, where I made CRISPR knockout frogs. And then I did a short postdoc at Harvard Medical School, US, where I did learn a little bit of gene therapy again based on CRISPR-Cas9. And then I finally came to Germany to be with my husband and end our forever long distance relationship, where I ended up in Simon's lab, and currently I'm working on liquid biopsy. So today's talk comes from a little bit from all of my applications all around the world, and today I'll discuss some of the key points that I have seen missing in most applications in postdoc applications or applications in academia. However, given the short time frame, I'll be talking a little bit fast, and this presentation will be made available to you after the talk, so you don't need to take notes on it. And I'm happy to answer any questions after the talk. I'm also happy to meet you some other time. But I'm a postdoc here. I don't get paid to do this. So of course, I won't be able to meet you or talk to you during working hours. But after work or during the weekends, I'm very happy to answer your questions. Or if you need help with applications, if you need to discuss anything, I'm also open to that. And yeah, with that, stay tuned and yeah, enjoy. I hope you enjoy. All right, so we all know pretty much that networking is super important nowadays, at least in 2024 or almost 2025. And Timo also touched a little bit on how we should connect to people. But we all have seen this clickbait thumbnails on YouTube and LinkedIn that how can you get a job without even applying to one? But then the question is that how do we start the networking process? We always have this in back of our mind that when we are trying to connect to someone, trying to connect to a stranger, what should we write? What will that person think about us? What if they don't respond to us? What if they don't want to help us? Yes, all of that might be possible when we are trying to talk to someone, trying to connect to someone about a job application or about a future opportunity. However, that shouldn't stop us. What I'm trying to say here that nobody is thinking about us, nobody is being upset with us if we are trying to connect with them to get some information about a job application. So the most important thing is that most of the times when we are networking, we are not really asking someone for a job. However, we are just making sure that we demonstrate our skills in front of that person well enough so that they can connect us to someone who can offer us a job, or maybe they can get us an interview. That's the most we are expecting. And even if you don't get a positive response from them, I would request you not to take things personally, because they might be busy, they may not have the bandwidth to help you, or they might think that our skills are not just enough to apply for the job. So take whatever you can learn from them, move on to the next person, and make sure you follow up even if they don't respond, because people are busy. We are all busy. The next key point that I want to mention is that it is easy to communicate with strangers over emails or texts or on LinkedIn or WhatsApp. However, when we meet them in person, that gives us a huge chance to demonstrate how amazing we are, to demonstrate all our skills, all not maybe our technical skills, but our personality. If that person is your future colleague, a coworker, they obviously want to know what kind of a person you are. Are you easygoing, or do you have a really bad sense of humor, or are you someone who would want to hang out over lunch or coffee or Christmas parties? So yes, it is very important to meet someone in person, to connect, to network, rather than virtually over email or online over Zoom. And no matter how much it is said that when you meet someone outside that it is a very casual meet, it's a very casual talk, it is likely a potential interview. by interview, I don't mean that they're going to ask you questions. Can you do sequencing? Can you do qPCR? But it's an interview of your personality, what kind of a person you are. So yes, and then when you are also, you'll likely be asked a question that why do you want to leave your current job? If you are not a PhD student looking for a postdoc position, but maybe you are a postdoc looking for a non-research-based position in academia, maybe you're asked this question, why do you want to leave your job? No matter how much you hate your current position, do not say anything bad about them. Because immediately that person will think that, okay, maybe if you are going to leave this job again, you will also badmouth your future employer. So try to just say, come up with another reason. And then most of the non-research academic jobs are almost always filled internally. And because from connections inside the university, people come to know about other people who are capable of doing a particular job, and then they're usually hired that way. So it's very important that if you want to go for non-research based jobs inside the university or inside a hospital, you have to connect to people who are currently working in these positions or who are in a position to hire for those positions. It's very important. And also, if you cannot find a full-time role, most of the time what happens is a PhD student starts as a part-time job in a full-time, in a non-research position, and then they move into full-time, which is also very possible. So do not always keep your eyes fixed on full-time permanent positions. You can start small and then grow into a bigger position. All right, now coming into some example texts or emails that you can possibly write when trying to apply for a postdoc in a lab, which doesn't always have advertised positions. It is for, let's say, for a lab, you know the PI very well. Your current PI is also well acquainted, or maybe not, but you have been following their work for a while. And as a young PhD student, this has been always your dream postdoc lab. You know what exactly they're doing. You know very well, you have an idea of how you can contribute to your work, but how are you going to approach the PI for a postdoc position? So this is what an example text should look like. And here I have, this is just an example. Of course, you can improvise. And the key things that I want to highlight here is what you have to come up with a specific question, because if you have been working in a similar field for a while, you are expected to know what is going on, what are the shortcomings, what is still unanswered, what is already answered, what is unanswered. And this and suggesting this or proposing this is going to set you apart from most other candidates. I would say 99% other candidates won't do this, because if you come up with a specific question, then the PI doesn't have to spend a lot of time trying to make you understand what you are supposed to do. And the next, you can also suggest some general broad questions. These don't have to be super specific, but they also give an idea about that you have a broader vision of about a broader applicability of the research area in that field. And finally, if the potential PI doesn't answer, follow up after 7 days. Everybody is busy, so it's very obviously easy to forget. And make sure that you put your phone number also in your email signature, because if it is another lab within the same institute or within the same university, most likely the PI is going to call you and ask you for an interview. So you don't want to miss any chance of communicating. So it's very important that you have all this listed in your email, or your, I would say, proposal email. And again, you don't have to write this down. If you want to, this slide will be available to you after the talk. All right, now let's say you are doing a PhD in a particular field, and you're kind of bored. You don't want to stay here forever. You don't see yourself doing the same thing as a postdoc in future, and you want to switch to a different research area. But you're kind of scared that, oh, I don't know anything about this. I have no idea. How do I do this? How do I even do an experiment? How do I come up with a question? How do I come up with any solution? How do I know what are the shortcomings of this field? Well, it seems very scary in the beginning, and I also went through this phase where I had no idea what I'm gonna do, but I just didn't want to stay in the same area, same area where I did my PhD. However, with time, it becomes, you get used to it and you learn, and it becomes easier. But what is important is getting the job, you have to first get a job in the area where you want to do your postdoc to be able to learn. And here is how your example email should again look like. And here again, I would like to highlight these. Let me get my pointer. Yeah. Here you have to suggest 2 questions, 2 or 3 broad questions, which doesn't have to be super specific, but they should give you an idea that you have kind of not a specific idea about specific questions, but a bigger goal or an idea about how your research applies in the long run. And then the next would be that when your future PI reads your CV, they might be wondering that, oh, you did your PhD here, and then why do you want to go here? So you have to find a hook or a link, a transition, a reason to transition. For example, for me, my PhD was in developmental endocrinology, and I wanted to do something different, which was gene therapy in the beginning. But I had to find a link, and I could not find any. But what came up to me is that I used CRISPR as the tool for during my PhD as an important tool, and then a lot of personalized medicine is now being generated using CRISPR. And a lot of that CRISPR is also used in gene therapy. More advanced CRISPR is used in gene therapy. So I used that as a hook. So you have to find your own hook or link, how you're going to use that for transition. And then because you don't have much experience, literary experience in your future postdoc area, you have to make sure you demonstrate your skills, your fast learning skills, your critical thinking skills, and how fast you're able to learn and implement your ideas in the lab. And don't be shy of doing that. It's not bragging, but it's important that you tell them, despite that all of that is listed in your CV, because most likely your potential PI is getting hundreds of these emails in a day. So the shorter and crisper you keep this first email, the better it is. They will most likely not open your CV in your first email. So you have to make sure that you get the most important information across to them in this first email, in this short paragraph. And then again, follow up after 7 days. And then finally, if you are trying to connect with a current or previous employee for a job, maybe this applies to both maybe previous postdocs in a lab or current postdoc in the lab, or a non-research position. Maybe you want to apply for a project management position or a clinical coordinator position, and you are trying to connect to a previous or a current employee within the university, within the hospital. And so then again, here is an example text. And so since this person is not a recruiter or hiring manager, they don't need too much information about you. And so again, as I mentioned, that invite them for a coffee instead of continuing the meeting over email. If this person is in the same city, if there's an opportunity to meet them in person, try to initiate that. And also make sure you clearly write down what exactly you want to know from them. If you don't write that down, they will most likely assume that you want them to give you a job. But that's not what you want from them. You only want to know what are the growth opportunities, for example, here, and then how their work experience is as a clinical research coordinator or project manager. These are just example jobs that you might be interested for as a non-research position in the academia. And then most of the times people write this sentence at the end, looking forward to hearing from you. It's not bad essentially, but then what you're kind of doing is making them obligated to respond to you, and they feel like it's a responsibility even without knowing you at all. But instead, if you write this, that, hey, I totally understand that your time is valuable and it's a lot to ask as a stranger. However, if it's totally fine if you don't have time for a quick chat, stay safe and have a great rest of the week or weekend. So then here you are giving them basically a power or a choice that now is in their power, whether they want to talk to you, whether they want to not talk to you. So that makes them more likely to respond to your message, as you also come off kind of grateful and thankful for their time. So this is just a suggestion. You might want to stick to the previous one, or you might want to switch to this one. And also some tips is that this networking message, don't send your CV. It's ideally not suggested to send your CV, because then it's kind of too much information to them. You're kind of burdening them to look at your CV and make sure you value their CV and you're kind of showing that, oh, look at how what skills I have. You are not at this stage. So after they agree to meet with you, then you can send them your CV before the meeting so that they have some kind of talking point. They know where are you from, where your education is from, but not before they agree to meet you or agree for a more or a longer or a more detailed conversation. And please, 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 please don't send emails or networking messages in the weekends. It's kind of people don't like that most of the times, and try to schedule them early in the morning so that it gets them right. They get it right in the beginning of their day and prioritize responding to them. And again, expect the meeting to be kind of a casual interview and request them to connect you to someone in a hiring team or in a position in a hiring position. Next, and this particularly applies to postdoc positions, but also to non-research positions where you're supposed to make make a presentation during your job interview. And there are some tips to make your presentation stand out from other candidates. And this is not an exhaustive list. There are many other things you can do, but these are the things that I have noticed the most. So first, your title should be attractive, because just imagine before you start your talk, there will be a few minutes when you are sharing your screen and your title is just there, and your PI is a potential PI is just introducing you to the lab member. So people will be looking at the title of a presentation for quite a long time. So you have to make sure it's not boring, it's interesting. And then you have to tailor it according to your audience. Again, if you are giving this presentation for a lab which knows about your research area pretty much well, it's fine. You can go into the specifics. If you are giving this presentation to a lab where they have no idea of what you did as a PhD, or they have very little idea, you don't have to go to specifics. You can give an overview, just as like introduce a problem, introduce current solutions, and you have to make a story that whatever current solutions are there are really bad, and what you did in your PhD, you kind of tried to solve that problem and come up with a better solution. So try to make a story, keep it interesting, short and crisp. Then another important thing that I want to highlight is it's better not to put any irrelevant text or images on the slide, and only put on your slide what you are going to discuss, what makes sense. Sometimes we have to explain these very complicated pathways in biology inside the cell, and there are very good example images, but we don't want the whole picture. We just want to explain a single pathway, and we don't want to make our own. It takes too much time. So you can use, for example, this complicated pathway, but make sure you use and here, let's say I want to explain only RAS signaling through the MEK pathway. You make sure you use a laser pointer and direct your audience to this pointer, or maybe highlight this pathway some way, so that they're not lost in the rest of the picture and then don't listen to you or don't understand you at all. Make sure you direct them to what you are trying to explain. So it's very important that they don't get lost or zoned out and start daydreaming during your presentation. And another thing is that we all want to highlight the fancy results or the important results that we have found during our PhD, which might be very little, or which might be constitutes very small time period of our PhD. For example, for me, in my entire 5 years, I think the happy times, or when I got good results, was just probably 6 months. The rest was mostly things not working, or 90% of the times were things not working. But that is also very important when you encounter things not working, how you solve those problems. And this is an example of this very ugly looking desiccator with tapes all over, because we didn't have any cell culture incubator in our department. It was not a cell culture working department, but I needed to do some ex vivo culture. So this is how I made an incubator, an airtight chamber with high oxygen, out of a desiccator, and it had to be kept on a rotator, so the lid would slip out. So I had to tape it down with this tape and keep it airtight with Vaseline. So it worked. It was completely sterile. It worked. We got amazing results. But you have to come up with these, you have to demonstrate how you solve these problems, no matter how silly it sounds to you, but it might be very important in demonstrating your problem solving skills. So keep that in mind when you're making a presentation and showing your results. Next is the interview process. Again, what makes you stand out is try to demonstrate how you went out of your comfort zone to learn something. Like, did you take some extra courses? Did you have some side projects, plan B? And if you had to write a term paper during your course, if you turn into review papers? Did you write for external funding or win competitions? And even if you did not do it as a, if you're in the initial stages of your PhD, make sure you go for this, because these are what set you apart or from other PhD students. And what new are you bringing to the table? This is only for postdoc positions. And for example, if you have to switch into a different research area and you have to write these questions, how are you going to do that? Because you have no idea. A good way to do this is a kind of a hack, is find a review article in the same research area. For me, it was, let's say, gene therapy, not by the same PI in whose lab you're applying, and not more than 5 years old. Quickly skim the review and look for the end of the paragraphs, which suggests future studies and unanswered questions. Now pick some of those questions, change them a little bit, and put them in 2 slides at the end of your interview as what you are going to do next in your future lab. And this is how it can look like. For example, this was once I applied for a position in IPSC 3D heart printing, and it doesn't have to be super detailed, but this is, you can just give a brief overview of what you are going to do. Another one was also on gene therapy. This was also a suggested study. Again, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but you can give a brief overview. And the similar slide of when I applied for a position here where I'm currently working, how the example slide kind of looked like. And the next is that you have to, as a postdoc, you should be already starting to think as a leader. So you have to think about, can you do this? Can you delegate tasks? Can you think as a leader? So we all want to be in the lab all day and do everything in the lab, do all experiments, but actually that is not possible. We cannot do everything. And if we do everything, our projects will be very limited. We cannot expand our knowledge. We cannot expand our projects. So we have to learn to delegate tasks. And yes, you would not come off as lazy if you are trying to delegate tasks and work smarter. So make sure you also highlight if you have any sort of such experience during your PhD. And also think about, so choosing the right offer, you might have now, let's say, 5 postdoc offers. You haven't had an amazing PhD program, you have excellent publications, but also it's very important to choose the right offer. Think yourself, do you want to stay in because you cannot be a postdoc forever, it's just a temporary position, but how do you see your life after a postdoc? Do you want to stay in academia? If yes, is this the right lab? If there is enough funding, right connections, does this lab publish well? If now, what is plan B? What are you going to do after your postdoc? If you want to change during your postdoc, how soon or late you want to switch? And you need to have that in mind, that if you switch in the middle of your postdoc, you have to have a conversation with your PI. So you make sure that you have those thoughts in your mind before you start as a postdoc, whether or not you want to, what you'd want to do after your postdoc. And then, so this is also kind of when we are ending our PhD and maybe we think that, oh, I have been through a lot, and most of the times we feel that we didn't do enough. I could have done much more. And then we go for a postdoc position. We just want to get a job. Like, okay, just give me a job. I don't care what it is. But also think about, you are much more worth than just a job. So you have to make sure that you go to a place where you are also valued. You are valuing your job, your lab, your PI, your lab members, and you should also be valued the same way. And you have to make sure that you are valued, or you will be valued, and you are going to an environment where you are welcomed and you are understood and you are valued by asking questions. You cannot do that after you start your job, because then there is no way back. You have to quit. But you have to make sure you ask the right questions and understand that. And these are a list of questions that you can ask, but again, this is not an exhaustive list, but you can ask questions about funding, about management, about your co-workers, about authorship and career development plans. And I also always hear this question that, okay, if I ask other lab members, how is my PI? How does he or she manage the lab? What if they don't like me? What if they don't give me the job? Well, then you better not should go to that lab, because if a PI has nothing to hide, if they are honest and if they have transparent working policies, they have nothing to hide. You shouldn't be scared of asking any kind of questions. And finally, according to me, some of the skills that you should absolutely focus on during your PhD is presentation skills. There is no doubt you will have to use your presentation skills for the rest of your life, no matter what you do. You end up as a postdoc, as a PI, in a company, as a non-research position, everywhere you have to do presentations. So stop avoiding presentation in conferences by presenting posters, and go for presentation, in-person presentation, where you can demonstrate your skills as a speaker, as an orator. Excellent writing skills, that comes off without saying. You have to write papers, and you also have to write stuff that other people other than biologists can understand. For jobs outside, other than postdocs in academia, in university, hospitals, as project managers, as clinical coordinators, German language is very important, because you are getting inside the government, inside the system. You have to deal with a lot of legal documents, and yes, you have to know German language. And as a PhD, you should be also good at collaboration, delegation, and leadership, and training and teaching skills, and you have to try to get them as a PhD or an early postdoc. Also, even though you might not need any of the programming languages, and maybe you can do all of your analysis in GraphPrep, Prism, or SPSS, or JUMP, it is very important to know how to code. At least some preliminary coding is important. Knowing how to do some preliminary coding is very important. And then if you are going for non-research position, you can demonstrate your management skills by organizing symposia, alumni meets, career days, like the one that I'm doing now. And it's not that difficult, I can tell you. And also try to make sure that you are apart from other candidates, that you are trying to do something which is different that other people do. And yes, I hear it all the time that, okay, I'm in the lab all day, I don't have time for all of this, I don't have time to apply for grants, I don't have time to apply for presentations. But these are very important skills that you only get the opportunity to learn during your postdoc and the very early years of your PhD. After that, nobody is going to provide you the opportunity to learn how to write for grants, how to do presentations. So you better learn this now, because you will have to do this for the rest of your life. With that, I would thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.